In 1910, the red car rail system in Los Angeles was the largest mass transit system in the world. Sadly, it is gone, but the red car name lives on in Red Car Winery out of Fort Ross Seaview. And tonight with Brady Moran, we discuss their vineyards and specifically one that is aptly named Heaven and Earth. Wait till you see what we have in store. My name is Martin Cody. I will be your host this evening. I am the co-founder of Cellar Angels, a now in its 12th year direct-to-consumer company that was built solely for the purpose of evenings like this, where we get to introduce you to a limited production winery. It's what we do for a living at Cellar Angels. We only feature wineries from Napa and Sonoma. These are all direct to consumer. You can come to the Cellar Angels website. You can purchase the wine. You can actually purchase the wine in advance of this evening. And I will show you how to do that right now because we have these beautifully curated sip kits. And this sip kit will have 4 bottles in it, sometimes 5. I see a Noble here, very special Cabernet producer from up on Pritchard Hill, a couple other ones. But if you go to the Cellar Angels website now and grab a sip kit, you will have 4 bottles for each of the next 4 Fridays to sit along, talk, commiserate, learn, laugh, and enjoy wine from the comfort of your own home like we're going to do this evening. And we're going to be discussing with Brady the Red Car 2017 Heaven and Earth Vineyard Pinot Noir. And the Heaven and Earth Pinot Noir Vineyard is right over my right shoulder. This is actually a shot that we took when we filmed there about a year or so ago. And it was an absolute bluebird day. Got there early in the morning, almost got killed on the way there because Brady neglected to tell us that it was really a very narrow road that designed more for sheep than cars. But it is a special, special place. It's a special winery that I'm thrilled to introduce you to. And without further ado, our co-host this evening is Brady Moran, the direct sales manager of Red Car. Brady, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me. Pumped to be here.
As are we. It's very exciting for us because we love getting to introduce people to special talents, special limited production talents that are off the beaten path. And we're going to show some folks exactly where you are a little bit later on via Google Earth. But educate people on kind of your wine history and your wine experience thus far and how you ended up at Red Car.
Sure. Well, that's an easy topic to start with. So this is my first wine job was in 1999. So this is 22 plus years in the wine business. I started actually with a part-time job offer from my younger brother's Little League coach. This was in Saratoga, which is in the Santa Cruz Mountain area. So sort of Silicon Valley. But I started working part-time doing summer work in vineyards when I was still a teenager. And I did that work through college. And, when I finished college, even though I went to a school that offered wine courses, I didn't take a single one. But when I finished college, I was like, you know what? I know more about wine than most 22-year-olds. So I'm going to Napa. I ended up working in Napa for 10 years. And then from there, sort of searched to explore a new wine area, went to the Willamette Valley. I was in the Willamette Valley for 5. And then most recently, I got the offer at Red Car in 2017. So I've been at Red Car for the last 5 years. So more than 20 years now in wine, either doing sales stuff or, I still do vineyard stuff as a passion.
Awesome. Where were you in Napa?
For 6 years, I was at Cuvée, which is in Carneros, the southern area of Napa, and for 3 years, I was at Clos de Val, right there in the heart of right there in the heart of Stag's Leap. Yeah,
the iconic Clos de Val. No,
that was and that was probably the wildest place I worked. A winery that saw 50,000 plus visitors a year. We were constantly outnumbered by the people drinking around us. So.
That's where the unlike the tasting room that you have, the Clos de Val tasting room experience oftentimes is 5 people deep and it is a free for all.
Oh, totally. I mean, it would be hundreds of people. I mean, it was wild, but it was, the heart of Napa Valley is a classic sort of wine experience.
And hello to Michael, Nick, Peter G, Rick, Scotland, and Sean. By the way, has Zoom always alphabetized the attendee list? And it's taken me 95 episodes to realize that? That is unbelievable. My apologies for not having the savant-like skills to recognize that they are doing that for us. Jim B, I see you. Welcome. So it's funny you mentioned Willamette Valley, and we've had several episodes in the past 2 or 3 months where we've talked about climate change, we've talked about drought, and climate change or the effects of hit Willamette pretty hard in the last week or so. Why don't you tell folks what happened?
Well, yeah, I think details are still coming in, but apparently they had their worst frost event in the last 40 years. And it was significant enough to damage both the primary and the secondary buds. And the buds in a grapevine, there is a third one, but that third one isn't there to produce fruit. It's there to create growth for next year. So if they've lost their primary and secondary buds significantly, they're looking at a really minimal harvest this year already before we've even gotten really into the growth season.
Yeah, well, that is actually soul crushing and disheartening.
It's anytime you're facing that, it is really hard to take. But having to farm grapes for the rest of the year when you've experienced it in April has to be especially tough. And like I said, it's really unusual to, as I said, it was twice in the last 40 years they've ever had a frost event this late.
That's incredible. That's like I said, sad and disheartening, and hopefully things can turn around a little bit. Let me get back up to Redcar. And how did you learn about Redcar?
So Redcar had been sort of on the periphery of my vision, even when I was working in Napa. People were talking about, oh, there's this winery that's creating this Pinot Noir in this, fairly lean style. They're making rosé now in this really unique style. So they were on my radar before I actually heard that there was this position open, which actually happened at, again, my brother's wedding, which happened in New York. One of the investors for Redcar was at my brother's wedding, and he knew I'd been in the wine business for a long time. And we were standing at the bar waiting for a drink, and he said, "Hey, would you ever think about moving back to California?" And I said, "Yeah, I would." And he was like, "Really?" He's like, "I'm going to give you a call next week." And he called me the next week, told me about what was happening at the winery and the position, and I was already keen on the Pinot Noir, so it sort of slid into place from there.
That is super cool. And it's always amazing. We talk often and have for the last 12 years about how wine brings people together, and you're standing at a bar in New York and get offered a position at a winery in California because you were pursuing, getting a cocktail and getting a drink.
Yeah.
And as our guest said last week, alcohol kills germs. So we don't make the rules. So it's nice to make certain that you're partaking in that. I want to kind of touch a little bit upon the Redcar story, because it's something, and Denise Mission Control is going to put a link into the chat here. I would love all of you to click that link. When she does, it'll open up another window, and then just go read that after tonight's show. But in doing research, when we first started filming a year or so ago and have featured a couple of the portfolio wines, the Redcar story is fascinating. And it is actually about a method of transportation in Los Angeles County at the turn of the century in the 1900s. So this almost looks like a transplanted cable car from San Francisco, but it was earlier. So in the 1900s, the Redcar Transportation Company actually mapped basically all of Los Angeles, and they had the world's largest mass transit system in 1910. And when you think about what Los Angeles has today for mass transit, it's non-existent compared to what they had. This is a picture of the map from 1920. So you have downtown Los Angeles, and every single one of these dots on all of these lines are train stops. And it's what they indicate was what led to Los Angeles's massive sprawl and growing very quick. The Redcar line, it was the most famous because it took people from the county to the beach. And it went down to Long Beach, all the way to Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, and stopped at Balboa. And Brady can tell the story, but the owners used to sit there and think about what was going on in the people's minds traveling out of the city as they were sitting in offices or fantasizing and dreaming and just going to the beach to live their dreams and have a great weekend at the beach. And it was one of the reasons why they named the winery Redcar. But I think it's a fascinating example of a historical perspective that we don't often see. And I definitely encourage you all to read that history, because it's pretty powerful and it gives you a great sense of place and the people behind this brand. And so, Brady, I'd love you to share kind of what resonated with you and a little bit about the Redcar portfolio.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really an unbelievable story of how this started. So it was three wine enthusiast friends who were really like enamored with the wines they were drinking from the Rhone region. And you know, their mission originally was, how do we do this in California? How do we make, you know, these wines we're loving here ourselves? So in 2000, they bought 1 ton of grapes from Santa Barbara County, basically made it in a guest bedroom in Culver City near Los Angeles. And it was a huge hit. They had 50 cases of this awesome Syrah. They were so pumped about it that, you know, they rounded up some investors and everything though, for the first 5 years was all made in Los Angeles. It was part of this warehouse winemaking movement. So first 5 vintages, they were making all the wines in LA. It was primarily Syrah. And the big change is when in 2005, they found the property, which now became Redcar's estate vineyard, which is in Fort Ross Seaview. That was, you know, really the mission to you know, grow our own grapes, to have our own farm. So after 2005, everything started moving to Sonoma County for us. But you know, I would say, so Richard Kroll, he was one of those 3 founders originally. He's now the primary owner of Redcar, and he's a 6th generation Angelino. So, you know, he has a special connection to the Redcars because his parents rode them, his grandparents rode them. I mean,
super cool.
Redcar, the name Redcar was super important because they all had this connection to the Redcars, you know, a historical Los Angeles connection to Redcars. So that's sort of how it all came together. You know, I think it's wild. We were started as a Syrah brand. Probably only about 10% of what we make each year now is Syrah. We are fully in the Pinot Noir realm at this point. But yeah, Syrah was really the foundation for starting Redcar.
And when you read the history, Angels, you may or may not be surprised. The Syrah that actually set them on their heels was one that we've talked about when we did the Rhone region, and it was from Hermitage. And it is one of those otherworldly types of wines that touches every sense you have, your soul, your heart. And it was really what basically they said, all right, we need to figure out a way to make this in California. So fast forward to today, and Syrah is about 10% of the portfolio or production. What is overall case production?
We do about 7,000 cases a year. And probably, if we include the rosé we make, which is all Pinot Noir, probably close to 70% of what we bottle every year is Pinot Noir. So it is really taken over. We weren't started as a Pinot Noir brand, but Heaven and Earth, this vineyard we're talking about today, this was the start of our journey into Pinot Noir. It was our first Pinot Noir vineyard, first one we, you know, planted ourselves and had a plan for. And we also do, let's say, roughly 10% of probably what we do is Chardonnay. We do a tiny bit of Cabernet Sauvignon. We're one of the few wineries that does Cabernet from the coast. And that makes up everything that we do at this point. Pinot Noir, Rosé, Chardonnay, Syrah, and then, you know, 4 to 6 barrels of Cabernet every year. And that gives us roughly our 7,000 cases. I would say from a growth standpoint, we could make and sell more Pinot Noir. But
interesting.
Yeah.
And Doug R., I see you, and I know you're going to be here for a cameo appearance because there's some arts that you have to engage in Minnesota. So I'm not going to say Doug's last name. Yes. Oh, and by the way, Doug, you were the winner of this week's pop quiz. So congratulations. The quiz that goes out each Monday is both in accuracy and speed. So you can be fast and wrong, but that does not count. I learned that in college, and it is still true today. So I would like everyone to pay attention to their answers. We had about 10 answers within 5 minutes of the release of that quiz. So Doug was first. Congratulations, Mr. R. And there will be quite a few loyalty points put into your account, Doug, for that correct submission. One of the things, Brady, getting back to Redcar, is your vineyards are not like where the tasting room is. So you just can't walk out the back of the tasting room and give people the vineyard tour, but you do provide vineyard tours that are actually pretty ridiculously special. So walk folks through what they entail and how they can schedule one.
Yeah, so we do tours at 2 different sites, Heaven and Earth, the one we're looking at here, and Zephyr Farms, which is sort of our equivalent Chardonnay vineyard to this site. It's just a few miles from Heaven and Earth. They're both about a 10 to 15 minute drive from the tasting room. So this is what we do. You come to the tasting room, we meet you there, we greet you with a little rosé. Then we take the drive out to either of these vineyards, where then we can talk about the Sonoma Coast or any other cool wine topic that's out there right now. Then we basically just do a short walk to the top of the hill. The most important thing we do is drink the wine from the site while we're walking the site. And that's like what really makes wine special, is when you're actually like, looking at the vines and the farm that it comes from, and seeing, all those things that factor into terroir. You can see them and smell them and breathe them in. That's what's so special. And these sites are incredible. I mean, both this Occidental area is just really remarkable. One of the most beautiful areas I've ever seen. Hence the name Heaven and Earth. I mean,
right.
We didn't come up with that. That came out organically from people standing around there and going, "Wow, this site is really incredible." So,
and and for us, I mean, we get to see a lot of vineyard sites doing what we do, and we've been going to the Valley 25 plus years, or wine country as we call it. And there are quite a few special places, whether you're on top of some of the mountains, but as you move out of Santa Rosa and past Sebastopol and continue to move towards the coast, there's some rugged land there. And it's untamed, if you will, compared to some of the hillsides and things that you might see traveling Route 29 in Napa or Silverado Trail. This looks like it just saw a covered wagon about 2 months past, oftentimes, and that was it. It is some very, very special places, and this vineyard is one of them. When we were all out there filming, it was a cool morning. The fog, was still lifting off. One of those perfect days that you dream about, and it's just a special place. And you come in off this road right behind me that I'll show folks in a second. But it is a neat place. How many tons do you get off this property?
So the original planting, the block that we're looking at, is 4.5 acres. And so 4.5 acres, we usually get a pretty reliable 2 to 2.5 tons per acre at this site. So we're looking at 10 to 12 to 14 tons, maybe in a really exceptional year. But the most we've ever done of a bottling of Heaven and Earth in a single year has been about 400 cases.
Okay.
Tanner's our winemaker. He will select the barrels that he thinks are, these are the most Heaven and Earth barrels we've got. I get to participate in these tastings. It's one of the best parts of my job.
Twist my arm.
Yeah. We basically go through, we taste every barrel of wine that came from Heaven and Earth, and we give it a score, just a 1, a 2, or a 3. A 3 would be, this is the most expressive of the terroir of the site, what we think of as Heaven and Earth, gets a 3. 2s might make it in the final blend. A 1, though, will get designated to what we call our Sonoma Coast Pinot, which is a blend we do from the other Pinot sites we have available. So 400 cases, I mean, what is that, times 4? So what is that, 16 to 20 barrel? I mean, the most we do is like 20 barrels of this wine. And
I have no idea what it is. I told people there'd be no math.
yeah. But here's the really good news, because 400 cases isn't a whole lot in an ideal year. I mean, that's our best year when we do 400 cases of Heaven and Earth. The good news is we just planted an additional 5 acres further up the hill from what we're looking at right now.
And I'm going to show everyone those 5 acres because it is crazy cool. I had a chance to walk that before they planted it last year, and it is up there. Before we get to that, though, I do want to ask a couple poll questions. So for those of you that are new to Cellar Angels, we like to quiz the audience. There is prize money available. It is carried over for 94 episodes. No one's won a thing. It's uncanny how that happens. But since we're talking about Pinot Noir, this is a two-part question in one question. Pinot Noir is blank in acidity with blank fruit flavors. Pick one. Is it low in acidity and red fruit flavors, high and red, low black, high, low? You get the picture. And while you are all while you're all doing that, I'll take a sip of that Heaven and Earth. So there's people watching on YouTube. Oh, they will be watching on YouTube. That's right. They don't get to see the trivia question. All right, we'll give this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. According to the answer in the WSET exam that I pilfered this question from, it is high in acidity and red fruit flavors. So I thought that could go a couple different ways because I think all of us have had some Pinot Noirs that may not have the bright red fruit, but have more Burgundian style forest floors, some compost, some mushroomy, that some of the dark blackberries, but that's just what the exam said. But I'm going to challenge you all because the next question is tougher. And this question talks about, again, from an exam for WSET level 2, wine and spirits education training. Which of the following flavors will make the wine seem more fruity and less acidic? Choose all of the ones that apply. So this is a multiple choice answer. So we get this question a lot. Does this wine taste fruity? And almost everyone says, well, it all depends on what you're having with it, because what you're eating will definitely change the way the flavor feels in your mouth. So you have the answers being acid, salty, umami, or sweet. And for those of you that are, it is Mother's Day, so your mommy is a flavor. I literally just made that up and will never repeat it again because I know that was painful to hear. Umami is kind of a savory flavor. Think of ripe tomatoes, mushrooms, some shellfish like anchovies, very savory. That is what umami is. So I'm going to give this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What's interesting is I don't know how to share the results here because it doesn't show me what each person picked. I do know that a lot of people picked all 4. However, it will be the honor system. The answer to have a wine taste more fruity is to have foods with acid and salt. So anything when you think high acid and salty, it's going to make whatever wine you have taste more fruity. Pinot Noir, as we saw from the first question, has high acidity. So if you want to kind of accentuate the fruit aspects of the Pinot, have something with equal acidity or something that has a lot of salt with it. So that concludes this evening's educational portion of the broadcast. I was a little bit amazed that it was acid and salt. I got that one wrong in the quiz. Did you have any ideas on that, Brady?
I got that wrong too. I wouldn't have thought of acid-driven food as creating that flavor. The saltiness I did get.
Okay.
But yeah, I really like that question. That's a really thought-provoking question. I'm gonna have to turn that over a little bit.
Well, and I agree with the thought provokingness of it, because when you think about some of the things you guys do at the tasting room, and specifically foods that are shared. And when you think about a lot of salty meats on a charcuterie tray, that can accentuate the fruit just based upon what we just saw and heard. And it's like, okay, I get it now. Some of the salamis, some of the supersadas and things like that do have a lot of salt in them. So the wine can taste fruitier than maybe it would be if you didn't have any of that. So that's kind of cool with regards to what foods we can put in front or out on the table, how it can absolutely just change the character and flavor profile and the mouthfeel of a wine versus just having it out of the glass. One of the fascinating things about wine that I love.
I would agree. I would say that the way foods pair with wines are still one of the great mysteries I've experienced in the wine business. There has just been, when they hit right, oh my gosh, when you have that perfect wine and food combination, it's like a miracle. But then you try to chase it down again, you can't like replicate the same thing. It's just
totally. And that's that 1 + 1 = 3 type of thing. When you do find the right one, it's otherworldly. It's so fun to find that pairing and you want to replicate it. We are getting near the bottom of the hour. So if anybody wants to turn on their camera, they can. Before we get into the life cycle of a vine, I do want to talk a little bit about Heaven and Earth. And you mentioned it was 4.5 acres. It is an elevation, and it's not your highest elevation vineyard, but it also is not your largest producing vineyard like we talked about. But there is something about it, and I specifically want to talk about the clones, because we talked clones a while back on Cellar Angels, and you've got Calera, Pommard, and 828. All of these are heritage clones, and it's basically, I have yet to see any definitive data that says any Pinot Noir clone in the United States wasn't from France. So it's all right there. And for most people, there's a great winery called Chalon, which has a heritage or a history in Pinot Noir clones. How much do you relish the clonal selection that they chose for Heaven and Earth, and comparing and contrasting it with the other vineyard blocks and the different clones? Is there anything that speaks to you specifically about Heaven and Earth versus some of the other ones?
Oh yeah. Well, I would say, the two that really dominate Heaven and Earth are Pommard and Calera, and the exact blend, the exact blend of what we're all drinking right now is going to be defined by both of them. Every berry of Calera clone from this vineyard is going to go in that final bottling. Calera is where we get that. Oh my gosh, Tanner talks about it having sort of that mystery spice, that sort of baking spice quality to it. But I also think it has that cola essence that, whether it's Coca-Cola or cherry cola or that cola nut, that's all coming from Calera. 100% of that's going to go in here. Pommard, I think, is that classic Pinot Noir profile, that Pinot Noir aroma that as soon as we smell that wine coming out of the glass, we're like, oh my gosh, that is France. That is every Pinot Noir I've ever known and loved. That's the Pommard clone. 828 for us is more of a producer. It gives us a little more volume, and I'll be honest, there's some years where our winemaker has designated 828 to our rosé program. Wow. He lets it, crop up a little bit. We won't drop any fruit, and we'll pick it a little earlier. Calera and Pommard are really what's making up the balance of the characteristics here, and they're just the most dynamic and lively clones that we've got. If we compare that to what else we're growing out there, oh my God, the clone talk for Pinot Noir can be endless. But I will say that up at our estate vineyard which is in Fort Ross Seaview, up there we always talk about Schoolhouse. And right. I don't know the exact history of Schoolhouse, but Schoolhouse seems to be the clone that really defines what's coming from our estate vineyard. And I would say that clone's a little broodier. It's bramblier. It's, Tanner talks about it as being the blue fruited, rather than the red fruited sort of characteristics. But those are the primaries we're working with.
Interesting. And I know I want to get to the life cycle of a vine, which we're going to get to in about 1 minute, but there was a question with regards to comparing and contrasting the Willamette volcanic impact on kind of vineyards as opposed to the California impact. Any noticeable thing there that you witnessed?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I will say this, and I hope this addresses the question a little bit, but in the Willamette Valley, everything has to grow off the valley floor for good soils for wine grapes. That's where you've got that rich, they call it Jory soil, that sort of red, they talk about the red hills in Dundee. That's all above, I don't remember the exact number, but it's above 200 feet above sea level, or 250 feet, you start getting that. And that's where you get sort of that richer volcanic essence. Around here, at least on the Sonoma Coast, we're looking at geologic, like tectonic uplift. We don't have volcanic on the coast like you would in Napa. I mean, Napa, you've got Mount St. Helena is an ancient volcano, and you do have traces of volcanic and streams of volcanic. That is one thing I learned about my time in Napa, is that of all the soil series that exist on planet Earth, half of them exist in Napa Valley. So you just have an extreme diversity of soils in Napa, which is one of the things that makes it so unique. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, you're precisely right. And we talk about that a lot. And I touch upon that. There's something in the vicinity of 33 different soil series in the world, and more than half of them are in Sonoma and Napa. And so that lends itself to be an unbelievable canvas and tapestry to produce just crazy complex wines because of the soil structure they have. So this evening's episode is all about the life cycle of a vine. And here we have it in beautiful pictures, thanks to Dreams Time. Brady's going to walk us through a couple of these. And you obviously have the leaf drop, the pruning, the bud burst, which we talked about bud break a couple weeks back. Leaf growth is what's being experienced now in the vineyard. Then you're going to have a little bit of flowering. Then the fruit appears, then the fruit sets. Then you get veraison. Veraison is when all of the green grapes start changing to red based upon the varietal. And then there's harvest. Then the vine goes back to sleep. Everyone parties and rests for about 3 months and starts it all over again. But talk to us with regards to timeline, Brady. And what I think is interesting is this is the life cycle of a vine through one growing season, because this changes after 10 years, 15 years, 20 years in the age of the vine. So walk us through kind of what we're seeing today being May 5th or May 6th and what's behind me. And I'll show some pictures as you're talking.
Yeah. Well, I would what we are experiencing right now is, yes, in this leaf growth phase, in the first vegetative growth phase, the creation of the canopy. And what we're seeing out there right now is really, I mean, in all my time in wine, I can't really remember a time when I've seen shoots growing so vertically, like exactly what you've got in this picture. They are the shoot positioning is happening very naturally, and then you can see all the flowers there. Oh my gosh, those flowers have all the potential to become clusters. We're seeing a ton of flowers on this new shoot growth. This is very opposite of what we would have been seeing the same time last year, because we were dealing with a really extreme drought, which we still are, but we've had more rain this year. So the vines are really investing in this vegetative growth. We are seeing these beautiful shoots. They're all in this sort of 8 to 12 inch phase. They've got their flowers going, and not to get our hopes up too much, because this is a great start to the season. But the next phase will be bloom. These little flowers will open. Grapevines
Before you go there, I'll just say this is what it looked like probably 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So you see the bud come on the spur, and then everyone gets crazy when it's bud break. And so you have the bud burst open, and you can actually cut this off and do a microscope analysis of it, and you can see the clusters inside the microscope, inside the image, and it's fantastic. Then you have the shoots that Brady was talking about, and then you'll have the fruit set. And continue. I'm sorry, Brady.
Yeah. So that'll be the next phase will be bloom. These tiny little flowers that you see there, that they look like clusters right now. Not every flower you see will turn into a grape, but the hope is a lot of them will. So we're gonna have that bloom period is really what we've got to get through. That is when a devastating weather event can really hurt us. That would be if we got a lot of rain, if we got hail, if we had high winds for several days. That would really prevent these flowering buds from pollinating themselves. So
when are you out of quote unquote harm's way as it relates to a heavy rain and that sort of thing?
We should be out of it now, but in my experience, there have been June thunderstorms here. It's been unusual, but I go back to 2011 when I was working in Napa, and there were 2 rainstorms in June at the time when both Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet Sauvignon were flowering. And that particular year, 2011, for those 2 grape varieties, and I was at Clos de Vol at the time, but we lost half the crop just due to, basically 2 rain events in June. It is really unusual for, we're in a Mediterranean climate here. We're pretty much defined by 2 seasons, a wet season and a dry season. And we want to get all that rain in our wet season, which is usually December through April. And then we have a really dry, but fairly moderate summer is ideal. So when we get rain in mid-June, that's really unusual, and that can really be devastating for our potential crop.
No, and we've heard it tonight with regards to the frost in Willamette, the latest frost they've had and the hardest, most severe frost they've had in 40 years. And as you mentioned, the details are still coming in on the damage that's going to inflict on this year's crop. And earlier this year, we saw Champagne get a devastating early frost, which right at the beginning of bud break can basically not pollinate. So you can shut down that whole vintage very quickly. So it's so tenuous with regards to how much of it is outside your control. Does that add to the excitement, or is that just some of the cruelty you have to live with?
I would say it happened. That saw cuts both ways. But I think I was recently traveling with Tanner, and we're sitting next to each other on an airplane, and he says, "I would just love to have a normal harvest this year. I just really love to have a normal harvest this year." And I was like, I don't think you can count on that,
I don't even think you can define it. Well, what is normal these days?
Yeah. So yeah, it does. What bloom would be our big thing we'd be geared up for now. There's not much we can do to prevent a weather event during that. I mean, the plants are vulnerable during that. It's a 2 to 6 day window roughly. And we just hope, I was talking to our vineyard manager. He's like, I just hope that when we go through bloom, it's really mild. It's like 70 to 72 degrees. There's some sunshine, maybe a light breeze blowing, but right. We can't count on that. We can't count on that.
All right, let's actually show people where you are. And I saw some early chats from who in the comment line about getting the Google Earth ASAP. No, Jeff and Jane were. Oh, Hans is not there. Hans, I had an engineering question too. He's not on. So for those of you that remember, this is Cellar Angels. We focus on one region only, and it's Napa and Sonoma. And we try to bring you the best undiscovered trophies coming out of that region right now. And it's interesting, the phraseology that Brady used, because regulars and sipsters, as we refer to them fondly, they've heard us talk about the wine region of Napa and Sonoma and the fact that it is a Mediterranean climate. Now, that's unique because there's only 3% of the globe that is a Mediterranean climate. And not surprisingly, it basically surrounds the Mediterranean. But here you have Napa County and Sonoma County. And as Brady mentioned, you've got Mount St. Helena right up in here, which was volcanic. You had one just north of Coombsville, whose name escapes me, that erupted about 1 million years ago. And so Coombsville has a lot of volcanic material. But you've also got all of the marine aspect and the maritime influence of the Pacific coast, the San Pablo Bay, all of the rivers that run through this, the plate tectonics and the upshift that actually caused a complete direction change of the Russian River Valley from going down valley, and it then juts out and goes to the coast. This is our playground. This is where we think some of the greatest wines in the world are being produced. Some of the best stories, similar to the Red Car story, are being told. We want to share them with you. And by the way, fun fact, there's less than 2 cases of this Pinot Noir remaining on the Cellar Angels website, so I would move quickly. The northern Sonoma aspect of where kind of the Red Car area begins is to give you some orientation. So here you've got Santa Rosa, where Brady is joining us live. But as you go up 101, you'll hit Windsor, you'll hit Healdsburg, you'll hit Simi, you can move on all the way on up there to Geyserville. It goes up pretty far. But where Heaven and Earth is, and you'll see this road right over my shoulder, where Heaven and Earth is towards the coast. So this is the entrance. If this thumbtack would be way down here over my shoulder, down at the bottom of that road, that's the entrance to Heaven and Earth. This is the white knuckled part of the road to where if another car is coming at you, or a pickup truck, which is more common, you're going to need to pay attention and you'll be white knuckled. For those of you that get a little motion sickness, just make certain that you're prepared. It's a fun drive. It's a beautiful drive. It's postcard pretty. But the Heaven and Earth Vineyard is really something to behold. And you can start to see the topography changes as we zoom in. So this vineyard right here is Heaven and Earth. And it doesn't look like it's that steep, but au contraire, it is steep, because if I go to show the elevation profile change, and we start down here at the bottom and we go up here to the top, you can see that you're looking at 620 feet down at the bottom to 727 feet at the top. So in a relatively short period of distance, that has gone up 10 stories. And you will feel it in your lungs, your glutes, your thighs, every part of your body as you are walking up some of those rows. It is steep. And so now what Brady had mentioned that they've gone ahead and done is they've started to plant this upper section, which is an incredibly higher elevation change that goes on up about 200 feet above this. So now you're going from 620 up to 920. So this whole section up here is all being planted and is going to be Red Car. I don't know when that's going to produce, Brady. Thoughts?
We will pick some fruit from there this year, but it will probably go to rosé. The vines are still young, but next year we're anticipating a full harvest up there.
Wow, and you just planted them when?
2019 they cleared the land. 2020 we got all the baby vines in the ground.
Incredible. I encourage you all to go on a vineyard tour, and specifically here, because when you walk up here and then sit back and then hike up there, have some comfortable shoes on, because this view up here looking west is pretty spectacular, and you can see quite a ways. The views are amazing regardless of which way you're facing, because it's aptly named, right? This is Heaven and Earth. It is just a beautiful, beautiful property. And Tanner, just fun fact, has actually swam in this lake. I don't know if he would today. I did a lot of farm pond swimming as a child. I think Tanner likes bass fishing and farm pond swimming and making fantastic wine.
He does, yeah. I'd agree with all those things, yeah. So actually,
Awesome.
we can see the water feature right there on the map. So that's where we would pull for irrigation for this site. What's remarkable is even though this is a pretty warm spot for where we are in the Sonoma Coast, the water need isn't that high. This is a spot we don't have to provide a whole lot of irrigation for these vines. They've had lots of groundwater to work from. That pond is incredible to have there because it's part of a natural water movement. So we are able to irrigate from there. But one of the things that makes this site so, I would say, sustainable is that the water need there just isn't very high compared to some of the other spots we've got.
And Brady was kind enough to share some pictures. This is just from the other day.
Yeah, these were from Saturday. I took these on Saturday. Yeah.
So when I talk about hiking up there and seeing the view, it doesn't stink. I mean, it is a little bit special where you can feel it in your soul up there. And the beauty of these tours, as Brady mentioned, is you get to taste the soil. You get to taste kind of what this terroir is and how it manifests in the bottle. And Brady, I'd be curious, we're talking about the life cycle of the vine. So specifically as it relates to Pinot Noir, Burgundy does a great job of aging a lot of Pinot Noir, and we don't do it so well in the United States because of the commercial viability. We want to get maximum yield from an economic standpoint. What starts to happen at the 15-year mark? These vines at Heaven and Earth are now 18 years. So at 20 years and 30 years and 40 years and 50 years, what happens from a cluster production and complexity of the wine as the vine ages?
I love this topic because this is one of the reasons that you let a vineyard age like this is because the vineyard seems to take on knowledge, right? It seems to start knowing a lot about the seasons and what it's doing. Which then requires a little less on the farming side, which is great. You know, we want to have as few inputs as possible here. And to have a vineyard that's now reaching, you know, this vineyard has reached full adulthood. It's gone through droughts and you know, all kinds of wild conditions. We don't have to do as much here in terms of inputs. What we do need to do is handwork. I mean, we're really, you know, we just need to keep the canopy open. We need to manage how much fruit is being produced here. But really the advantage of having a vineyard that's reached this stage is really incredible because they require less on the spray side. They require less on the cultivation side. And I think this is vineyard science that people are you know, have realized just in the last, you know, couple decades.
Right.
But the fewer inputs we have, the better results we get.
So it's a little bit like parenting. You have to really pay attention to them as they're little, but hopefully as they start to grow up, it's less and less and less involvement.
Yeah, I agree. You know, what's wild is we had huge yields off this vineyard when it was really young. 2007, 2008, 2009. We were getting, on the tonnage side, we were getting quite a bit more, but the quality wasn't quite as high. You know, we're getting a lot, but we were finding that we were dropping more fruit, that we're really trying to sort of keep the vines back more. You know, at this point, looking at the shoot growth, you know, these vines know how much they can produce this year. We won't have to do a whole lot of fruit dropping. We won't have to do as much. What we need to do is keep the canopy open and clear. So, you know, mildew would be a big challenge for us. But if we keep that canopy open, if we pull the right amount of leaves and shoots, we're going to have those cool coastal breezes blowing through there, keeping everything sort of dry and you know, moderate. moderation is the key. Ideally, we're going to get somewhere between 2 and 2.5 tons per acre from this site every year. And when the vineyard settles into that zone, we're in a really good spot. We're in a really good spot.
Well, I think it's really cool too that you said you have to do less and less and less as the vineyard matures. And so you're right, the vines learn and they know what they need to know from a production standpoint. And if you are patient enough to just let them do their thing, you will generally be rewarded quite well. And I mean, that's fascinating as it gets older. I do want to show folks, you talked about those cool coastal breezes with regards to where you are. I mean, 8 miles is not very far. So when you think about the exact distance from the coast, I don't need to show the elevation here, but you're looking at the Heaven and Earth Vineyard and out to the coast. Yeah, 8.7 miles. So you're going to get that maritime influence in a big way. And hopefully if the canopy's open, that cool breeze dries everything out and keeps the mildew at bay. And you don't get the moisture in late June, July that you don't want. That Mediterranean climate that Brady spoke about, yeah, you want that wet season in the November, December, January, February timeframe. And then that's about it. You don't need, maybe an inch of rain a month would be wonderful. But it's fascinating to see the aspect of a mature vineyard kind of being on autopilot, which is what you want to have.
I would say when I was up in Oregon, I worked for one of the oldest vineyards in the Willamette Valley. It was planted in 1971. So they've had 50 harvests at this point. And what was incredible is they talked about that it was a pretty large vineyard, 200 acres. And They talked about when they first acquired the vineyard, they were like, oh my gosh, we thought this vineyard was on the decline, but we found that if we did less, if we just let the vines do their thing, we got more out of it. And they started, so they went to organic sprays and they started doing less, and all of a sudden the yields went up. The vineyard actually started performing better when there was less human activity happening.
Usually that's the case with Mother Nature. Just leave her alone. Exactly. Tell me a little bit about the 2017 Red Car Pinot Noir. Let's do some flavors, aromas, and pairings.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I got to say, and I'm going to be biased because I smell and taste this wine a lot. But if you weren't biased, I'd be suspect. When I smell Heaven and Earth, I am always drawn to initially the cola, the cherry cola sort of aspect. That is one thing that always grabs me about this wine. It is certainly a red fruited wine. It is red cherries, black cherries. It is driven by red fruits, which is, as Tanner talks, a great contrast to what would come from our estate vineyard, which he always talks about as being a more blue fruited wine.
Yep.
So, I mean, what can I say? I mean, Heaven and Earth gives us balance. It gives those classic Pinot Noir traits. It gives, in my heart, I'm always getting this cola aspect, and it tastes like where it's from. It tastes like where it's from. And I loved what you were showing on the map there, because I could sort of see that there's been some recent hype about what people are calling the Occidental Corridor. And it's sort of this little area that stretches from Freestone to Occidental on the map. It's become sort of prime Pinot Noir zone. And I could just see it on your Google Earth there. Just sort of prime time Pinot country.
It's ridiculous how well this varietal does out there. What would you think is the go-to killer pairing for this wine?
So Pinot Noir is incredibly versatile. I mean, which is why we love it. But I mean, I love this wine with like a hard I mean, this is me personally. I'm a big fan of like hard cheeses with some acid to them, with some bite to them. And oh my God, this goes really well with like a mimolette. If you've had a mimolette, that's like a really hard orange French cheese, one of my favorites. This would go well with salmon. This could pair well with a steak. I mean, it's got all this bright acidity, so it could really pair up with something with some fat to it. I love this plate you've got because it's got all these salamis on here. I mean, the saltiness of the salami would really go well with these wines. I mean, this is a wine that is super versatile. I can't think of too many things I wouldn't have with this wine. And which is why I think one of the many reasons why Pinot Noir has taken off in our hearts and minds, because we can really have it with so many things.
No, it's extremely versatile. Bruce, I did not say hello to you. Bill, I see you. Welcome. And now that you're here, I just want to welcome all of you. And I have to say, I see the harbor lights are coming into view. So we have to wrap up. I want to thank Brady for an unbelievable trip via the Red Car portfolio and specifically this vineyard in particular. So cheers to you. All of you can find the SIP episodes if you missed them on the YouTube channel that is dedicated to Cellar Angels. So sometimes work gets in the way, family conflicts prevent you from tuning in live every Friday night. So you just click the link that Mission Control just put in the chat and you will be automatically subscribed to the Cellar Angels YouTube channel. You don't have to miss a thing. Sometimes we put some special announcements out there. The 100th episode is coming up. So we have a challenge for you, Sipsters. We would like you to send us via email, and we'll put the email also in the chat, a picture of your wine cellar. We'll know who the picture is from, obviously. Your wine cellar, your fridge, or as our case is, our closet floor, because it's the coolest spot in the house in Florida. So I think all of you can relate to a wine cellar in the closet. I know most of you can. And then we're going to vote on it on the 100th episode all together. And we're going to tell you the parameters, but feel free to send, yes, Ivy, the basement. The basement works. Basements are actually good for those of us that have basements. Those are apparently against the law in Florida because it's below sea level. So I was unaware of that moving here, which meant we had to get rid of about half our stuff. Next week, we have Cliff family on with winemaker Laura Barrett. And Cliff also, and Brady probably knows them because they're up near the St. Helena area and organic biodynamic farmers as well. And we're going to be talking about that topic in particular. And it's kind of interesting because organic wines seem to be the rage in biodynamic, but there's also some negatives there because of compaction. And we'll get into a little bit about that. But we're going to be tasting a wonderful wine with Laura, and she's an absolute gem of a winemaker, and we're looking forward to that. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, and Sipsters and angels and heroes for helping us do what we do and helping Brady with this wine, I want to bid you all a wonderful weekend. Brady, sir, so good to catch up with you, and thank you for this.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast. I loved it.
We are going to see you down the road. I forgot about the special announcement because Brady has a side gig. He has a winery called Moran Manor. That is the family winery that is going to be featured on Cellar Angels in the future. And give me a 30-second overview of the property and the specialty.
Okay, sure. So we are farming Cabernet and Merlot on just an acre in Knights Valley. Knights Valley is just north of Calistoga, so just past like the Napa Sonoma border. My family has a 10-acre property with a historic home. It is surrounded by 600 plus acres of Beringer vineyards, Knights Valley. So we are this little island in the middle of a great growing area, and I've been managing the family vineyard for the last 4 years, and just in the last 2 I've taken over the winemaking. So it's a total family project, and it'll be fun to talk about.
Yes, so Angels, you're in for a treat with Moran Manor Cabernet Sauvignon from Knights Valley, the island within the stranglehold of, we won't even mention them again. They aren't a paid sponsor. Awesome. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Can't do this without you. As I said, we're building towards the 100th episode. I'd love to have 100 people on that televised virtual broadcast. So feel free to invite 5 friends. I don't care if it's take your son to virtual wine date day, as long as your son is over 21. It'll be good. Be good to one another. Stay safe out there, and welcome to Cellar Angels, your virtual escape from reality. Cheers, everyone. Had a blast.
Cheers.